Live, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today in our ever adventurous quest to search for new and interesting things that are happening in the tech space. We fell into the interest of Michael Bramlage and QUIDD. Now, Michael, I'm going to leave most of the storytelling up to you. So welcome to the show today. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
So you did something really interesting with QUIDD. You were way ahead of the curve in terms of digital collectibles. Now, I was slow to kind of recognize this stuff. So do you want to tell us a little bit about QUIDD and your background?
Absolutely. And obviously, first off, thank you for having me on the show. The timing is really just right. The QUIDD token, which I'll talk about later, dropped yesterday. My sense of timing is really messed up because I don't think I've slept in 36 hours, but the QUIDD token thank you. Yeah, it just came out.
Giving birth.
It was a labor of love, absolutely, and I'm so proud of the team for how everyone contributed. But you can see the QUIDD token on CoinMarketCap, on CoinGecko. It's out there into the world, and we couldn't be more happy about that. So the timing is really fortuitous. But in terms of the story of the QUIDD token, of QUIDD itself, and of myself, let me go back maybe 15 or 20 years. So I started my career at Microsoft, sort of a very traditional product background in technology at the sort of end of Web 1 and the start of Web 2. And it was just a very sort of conventional job in technology. And that sort of lasted about 9 or 10 years. And then I moved to New York City and was recruited into a company called Topps, the old American baseball card company. And it was, I remember a lot of my friends were scratching their heads about how could you go from sort of writing code to now dealing with cardboard and candy. But the opportunity was really incredible because they were going to give a young guy like me way more responsibility than I earned. And that responsibility was to basically build a digital division under the Topps brand name. And Topps, as you may know, is synonymous with baseball cards, football cards. If you're a red-blooded American male, you've probably spent a few summers collecting their products, when you got interested in something like baseball or football. So I love the idea of taking what I knew about code and combining it with this just incredible 75-year-old brand to see if we could sort of invent some new products and build some new businesses. And we wound up sort of getting very fortunate and stumbling into the world of digital trading cards way back in 2011 or 2012, when very few people were doing this. I would say cards that were digital at the time had existed within the context of games or within pure play collectible card games like a Hearthstone, right? Or buying FIFA Ultimate Team cards. What we did at Topps with digital trading cards was really novel in that it was just about collecting. The value prop was really about owning as opposed to playing or leveling up in a game. And so after having done that for about 4 years, I became convicted and actually convinced that we were going to undergo a format shift and that people would eventually walk away from buying new cardboard and instead buy code. And that conviction was really based on having had a successful time there, but also that, a trading card is sort of a store of value. It's sort of a store of culture. And in that regard, you could actually theoretically build an experience that was purely digital that stored that value or stored that culture better, right? Or that gave you more liquidity and more efficiency and more cool things to do. I mean, a piece of cardboard can't animate, right? It can't move, it can't change, but you can do all that with the wonders of code. So I became convinced people would walk around in the future and pull out their phone and show off an awesome digital object that they exclusively owned, and that would be a thing that people would do. And this was early. This was 2015, 2016 when I co-founded QUIDD. But that is sort of the gory origin story of all my pre-QUIDD life. And then QUIDD itself really was the vehicle through which we could sort of explore this thesis. QUIDD started out as sort of a very basic collecting app where you could buy and barter limited edition, individually serialized digital stickers, digital trading cards, and digital 3D objects from the context of a mobile app on iOS and Android. But we really kept at it and kept at it and kept at it. And now we're sort of so much more. We're a place where a super fan, a physical collector, an NFT enthusiast can come in and buy and sell our digital collectibles off chain for real money, and very soon, at their own discretion, be able to mint those same collectibles on chain as NFTs. So I hope some of that made sense. But so this evolution that we've been on has been, absolutely incredible. We've morphed and changed and grew with the space. And I think, yesterday's launch of the QUIDD token is another sort of indication as well as to how QUIDD is moving into the world of Web3. So that's a lot, but hopefully that makes sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense. For me, the digital collectibles didn't make a lot of sense up until recently. I mean, for you to catch a trend like that so early on, it's fascinating. I like finding trends early, and the conviction you need is so important.
Well, yeah, and there were moments where I was like, we should just give up because I don't think this is ever going to work. There were some dark periods in this history, but it actually, I never had the loss of faith in a digital collectible, in large part because I viewed it as irrational as a physical collectible, right? Why is a piece of cardboard super sought after, right? The same irrational nature of paying thousands or tens of thousands of dollars for a piece of cardboard with an athlete on it, you can scratch that same irrational itch if it's done digitally. So
yes,
I've always looked at it where it is very irrational. It's very strange to covet and want to collect these objects. But the fact that one exists in cardboard and one is code doesn't replace the kind of craziness of it all. And so we sort of looked at it and said, well, we can recreate this craziness digitally. In fact, we can make it even more crazy. I think in terms of getting it, it really, we got it earlier in large part because we did sort of look and cynically at even physical card collecting, which millions of people do, which is going through a renaissance right now. All of a sudden, collecting Pokemon cards is like the coolest thing ever. But we also looked at that like that's kind of crazy too. But we like it; it's so crazy. Now let's just recreate that all digitally.
Yeah, it was Shakespeare, I believe you said, "Beauty of the hodlers."
I love it.
The relationship with value or price, especially the intangibility of the relationship of what someone finds valuable in anything, whether tangible or intangible.
This is why I think this market's going to be so huge, right? The NFT space is already gigantic, right? And that's absolutely blown me away that rocket ship ride that space has been on, like tens of billions of dollars at this point. Physical trading cards is about a $15 to $20 billion business that'll be or market that'll be about $100 billion in 4 or 5 years. So it's a very, very large space. And one of the reasons it's so large is collecting is very universal, right? Every human at some point in their lives becomes a little bit obsessed with collecting something, right? Whether it's high-end art or fine wine or watches or trading cards or stamps or coins or everybody goes through a period where they become obsessed with collecting items, and it's probably embedded in our DNA from when we were cave people, but it is something that's truly universal, which is what makes the market so big. And one of the reasons I think it is universal is it is sort of this notion of like beauty or value is in the eye of the beholder. I think what's great about the space, whether it's an NFT or a baseball card, is you can have 10 people look at that object and they're all thinking different things about it, right? Somebody loves it because the art is great, right? Or somebody loves it because the date that it came out, or somebody loves it because it had 5 past owners and one of those past owners happened to be a celebrity, or somebody looks at it and says, you know what, I can make a quick flip on that. And that's how I'm going to get rich. So it's one single object, and yet 10 people can look at it and have 10 different senses of its own value and why it's valuable. And I think that's what makes the space so cool and dynamic is everybody thinks sort of, basically it's a way for people to scratch an itch, but the itch is unique for every person.
Yeah, and the new digitally native, I guess even my generation, we're mostly digitally native for a lot of the things we do. Like a renaissance of collecting. When you said stamps there, I laughed because it was one of the only things that stamps and rocks I collected when I was younger,
right?
Like 5 or 6. You're totally right. There is a kind of a deeper relationship, probably with ownership of a bunch of things because of scarcity in the past, of of anything you find interesting.
Yeah, it's scarcity. It is the thrill of the hunt. It is wanting to bring order to a chaotic world. So the idea of like getting all eight of something is very interesting. It's a social endeavor. Lifelong relationships are built between collectors, right? About their various pursuits and all that. So there's just, I used to think of it in a way that, oh, this is just cardboard, right? But this, or this is just, a PNG, but there's actually so much going around and within that object that it is just terribly dynamic. And I think the numbers bear it out, whether it's the NFT space or the trading card space. They're massive, massive sort of white hot markets right now. Again, in large part because it's just really fun for different people to engage with them.
Yes, and even though they say they're non-fungible in terms of the individual asset itself, the fungibility of the digital Web3 space is significant in compared with the old peer-to-peer marketplace. You
Yep.
can trade a digital thing for any number of the choose your own money kind of paradigms that are taking place.
Yep.
Michael, one of the questions that jumped to mind was when did your shift with QUIDD start to really gear up towards the blockchain and crypto sector,
Yep.
recognizing the value add of
Yep.
this technology?
Yeah. So you're probably familiar, and your audience is probably familiar with the notion of play to earn games, right?
Very, yes.
And I think play to earn is, in 5 years we're going to all look back and say, I can't believe I played video games and couldn't earn money, or even potentially couldn't make a living. We're all going to really wake up from this collective sort of dream and be like, I can't believe I did that back then, when now I can earn passive or active income from me playing a game. I mean, it's so the future. It's so the third chapter in the arc of video games, right? The first chapter was like $60 for a disc on a console. And obviously there was arcade before that, but the modern era really was $60 for a disc on a console. Then it became free to play. And if you recall, free to play, core gamers in the start of free to play really didn't like it. They would shake their fist at it and they, whatever. But whether it's Candy Crush or other sort of, simple casual social games on mobile that blew up free to play, the size of the global player base of video games went up 10x because of free to play. But I think ultimately free to play for the last 10 years was just run so ruthlessly by these gaming companies that there had to be a better way. And that better way is this third chapter of play to earn. So in a lot of ways, QUIDD's sort of gradual transition towards blockchain, mirrors that transition. When QUIDD started, it was very much operating like a free-to-play economy. You would use in-app purchase to buy virtual currency. You would spend the virtual currency on digital collectibles, and then you could barter those with other users. But there was never a money out scenario there, right? It was money in, no money out, like a lot of the worst free-to-play games can be. And so we realized that was unfulfilling, that was unrewarding, and that you actually couldn't get access to an audience of true collectors where the economic utility of the collectible was a big part of its attraction, right? Yes, collecting's fun for collecting's sake, but also you want to be able to at least make your money back if you spend $100 on packs. So we came to a realization around 2019 that we had to transition our economy from a free-to-play economy and into sort of a collect-to-earn or real money economy. And we did that about a year and a half ago. And we're the only place really on the planet that normal people can buy and sell digital collectibles for USD and withdraw that money in a fully AML compliant manner on a weekly basis. We have collectors that are taking their spouses to a nice dinner on a Friday night because they sold a digital trading card on QUIDD and got a couple $100, and now they can go to a fancy restaurant. And that feels like terribly rewarding. But as that, did I lose you? Oh, shoot. I think I lost you. For folks on the live stream, I think we lost Arcane Bear. So you've been watching me deal with technical difficulties by myself, but it looks like I'm still live. I can hear someone.
That was impossible. Hey, okay, hold on. Are we still live? I'm Michael. I'm so sorry.
No, we're totally live. Your whole audience just watched me deal with technical issues.
Wait, so they let you got to stay live while I was away?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how it works technically. It blows my mind. But I had to pull up YouTube and watch myself. So it was kind of weird.
Oh, my I think I know what happened. I won't even waste the time to explain it. I'm sorry.
I thought my answer was so poor that you're like, I'm out of here. I just completely ghosted.
No, you were doing such a great job. I wanted you to be the host of the channel. I'm like, Michael's got this covered.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's what it was. Well, I'm glad you're back. I'll just finish my long-winded thought.
Yes, please. I want to hear.
We can move on. So basically, we moved to a real money economy in the not too distant future that enabled our collectors to buy and sell these off-chain collectibles in our aftermarket for USD and have their funds withdrawn in this fully AML compliant, but sort of really simple manner. And so we sort of were one of the first to do this in an off-chain capacity, but then we noticed the sort of trading activity in our aftermarket for these USD-based digital collectibles start to really rise in value. And you kind of get a problem at that point when you're seeing transactions for hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. And that problem is really one of, well, now that the value of these is so high, now that they have a USD value and can actually be sold for money with a withdrawal procedure, that's kind of a weird problem to have, because they're going to hit a value in sort of price where the buyer is going to want the security of owning this thing forever. Right? You're not going to spend tens of thousands of dollars on something that you could potentially lose, right? And that's where the blockchain comes in. That's where NFTs come in, because one of the best facets or best features of an NFT, where the whole item, the media, the metadata, and the ownership record are all tokenized and on-chain, is that the holder has true digital ownership, and they can have it as long as they're alive. They could pass it on to their kids or to their grandkids. And when you think of collectibles, that's really part of the proposition, is being able to truly own it and define the time horizon of ownership, not in days or weeks, but in decades or centuries. So us coming to crypto in general, and more specifically to NFTs, from a world where we'd already been transacting a high volume of digital collectibles, is the NFTs and more broadly the blockchain solve the problem of permanence for us. They solve a problem of portability for us. In some cases, they solve a problem of profit for us. So our whole sort of entry into this space was a long time coming, right? It didn't happen overnight, but it's also quite unique in that we've been doing this thing, and that thing actually gets greatly enhanced when you start to put more and more of it on chain. So independent of the token that came out yesterday, our approach for working with digital collectibles is it's really up to the collector who owns a digital collectible off-chain on QUIDD to decide when he or she or they want to move it on-chain and to which chain they want to move it. So in a lot of ways, it's very simplified. It's sort of like, you own something valuable on QUIDD, let's find you a better storage solution so you have the peace of mind that you can own this forever. And in some ways, Solana or BSC or Ethereum, they have all these amazing qualities of being decentralized, but a really important quality is when a collector moves an off-chain collectible on-chain, it's a far better storage solution for them to keep it there. So very long-winded answer, but I like to think our sort of entry into NFTs in the world of blockchain is unique in that it was a long time coming, and it was based on a real problem that blockchain technology uniquely solves. And so I think it's actually a really cool story. It's a long story, but it's a really cool story when you get to it, because it's not a fly-by-night project. It's not something that sprang up because the market got hot. It's something we've been doing, for me personally, for almost a decade. And now we can take all that and basically, take it to the next level by putting, as much of it on chain as we can.
Yeah, there's a few parts I want to touch into there later, but so you guys were originally backed by Sequoia Ventures and recently became part of the Animoca brand family. I really like their kind of vision and their mission. What's the partnership difference, or like what's the partnership potential, do you think, of working with someone like Animoca?
Well, Sequoia is obviously a top tier VC firm, and it was a wonderful experience, and we're very fortunate that they backed us, 4 or 5 years ago. That's a bit different because they're very, although our partner had an interest in the consumer internet space, they invest in almost everything, right? Anything that has an upside potential, that has some similar attributes of technology and scale, they'll get their hands into. Animoca is very disciplined and focused, and I want to say around 2017. I think they were one of a handful of companies that said, this is the future, whether it's blockchain or blockchain-based gaming or NFTs. And they moved their entire company into that space. And they became very prolific in terms of acquiring companies that had not yet gone to the blockchain, but had incredible potential for running amazing businesses and communities when they eventually would make it to the blockchain. I mean, the sandbox is somewhat included in that, if you're familiar with the sandbox metaverse. So working with Animoca has been fantastic because of their ruthless sort of attention to this space, in their unwavering commitment to the future of gaming or the future of collectibles being digital and being on chain, that their support has really acted as sort of jet fuel to turbocharge what we'd already been doing. And I think what's great about them, we talk about us having this unwavering conviction that a collectible was going to go from physical to digital. They've had this unwavering conviction that the future of gaming, or that the future of sort of any digital asset, would be on chain. And so we're very like-minded in that regard. And what that kind of means is, I think the community would call it like diamond hands. It means a long-term vision. It means, being willing to keep pursuing that 100-year time horizon, and having the guts to go through up and down cycles, just because you believe. So it's wonderful to have a partner in Animoca Brands that has that same sort of conviction that this is inevitable, and we're going to get there.
Yeah, hugely important part, especially in the early days, because it requires the ability to almost ignore everyone else and just be like, no, there's clearly signal here. We're just going to ignore everyone else.
Yeah. Well, and it is. I mean, I told you before we started, there were moments where we thought, maybe we're too early, or maybe those occasional nights of self-doubt. But I don't mean to say as well that any of us have really figured it out. There is so much more work to do. This inevitability, I think, is there. The fact that these will be huge markets where hopefully billions of people are owning a crypto asset, whether it's an NFT or a token. I mean, that's all going to happen. But the community and the companies in the space cannot get comfortable. They cannot rest on their laurels. There is way too much to build for us to take, what's working well with us in the world of crypto or the blockchain or NFTs, and still cross over to the mainstream. So I don't want to sound as if whether it's the QUIDD Token or our work in Mintables, or some interesting things that we're going to announce very very soon, that by any means like we've made it. Like there's just so much more for us to do, that we all better keep our heads down and keep working to get there. Because again, it's inevitable, and the promise is so significant. But we've got to stay very hungry.
Yeah, this is kind of there's a group of questions I want to ask next, and it has to do with a little bit about community branding and market peer-to-peer markets, I guess in general. So I'll try to I'll try to ask it in a few
Yeah.
segmented parts. So primarily the partnerships that you guys have built. I saw you've got Adventure Time with Finn and Jake, one of my favorite cartoons, which is the guy who did a Midnight Gospel, just probably one of my favorite visual cartoon artists. You also had Rick and Morty, which is an absolute cult classic for
Yep.
anybody who's a little bit of a weirdo. How do you feel the comparison of like these, let's say, more traditional legacy brands versus the kind of the brands that have been built on the cult of chain? I'll call it the cult of chain, because
Yep.
it varies depending on what chain you're using. How do
Yeah.
you see those two merging in the future between the cult of chain scenario, like the ducks and the crypto punks, or you know what I'm talking about, and then
Yeah. Yeah.
more traditional collectors sector?
Well,
How do you see those two coming together?
yeah, it's interesting. I'm pausing just because we think about this a lot. I mean, a Bored Ape is sort of like, you know, Mickey Mouse for the crypto community, right? And there are really only a handful of projects, I'd say, you know, mostly focused on sports, that have taken mainstream intellectual property and found a way to make it very, very relevant within the crypto community. But I think a big story about NFTs is actually how well a number of the projects that have invented their own IP, how well they're doing, right? Apes, ducks, like you name it, right? And so I think that's why that is. I've got some theories, but you know, there's something amazing about the crypto community as a whole, in that the order that things are built is kind of different from the traditional regular world. It's not necessarily build a product, launch it, and get some customers. You actually get your customers first, and you build that community potentially years before launch. Which at first I was uncertain about how I could transition into that sort of sequence of building, but actually it's really fascinating, because you get your best loyal customers, and they're not really customers at some point, they're members or they're owners. You get them in at the earliest stages of what you're doing, and that's an incredible way to get their support. And you need that support early on, you know, as you go through the arduous process of building something. So I think really why these crypto native brands have so much power within the crypto community, and why you're seeing them cut deals with, you know, major talent agencies, right, to create bands that will be on, on Spotify soon, is because they start out in such a community oriented way within crypto. That, yeah, I think it's fascinating. I think though that mainstream IP is going to do still incredibly well in crypto. A mix of the fact that you know, people that are native to crypto still like mainstream intellectual property, but also that the use of the intellectual property, whether it's Rick and Morty, Adventure Time, Bob's Burgers, Game of Thrones, you know, we even have the NBA on QUIDD. That the use of that IP will also help bring more mainstream people into crypto. But yeah, I think it's a topic that people should talk more about, is that Bored Ape is an utterly originated, utterly invented brand that has a ton of power. And it was just sort of invented for the community, by the community. And that's a huge success story.
Birthed out of the kind of the brain trust of people on Twitter and in the digital metaverse
Well,
that have been forming.
Right. And well, but I love, it's almost like punk rock in that regard. Like I love just how it's like, yeah, we don't need that thing from Hollywood. Like, let's make our own. Right. I think it's just a wonderful ethos. It's very crypto. And I love those projects. I mean, I'm waiting to see what comes after PFP, right, in terms of like the sort of hit projects. But it's been really fascinating to watch the last sort of 12 months. And it's funny. We did partnerships with Mr. Beast. You may know him from YouTube.
I watched that video the other day.
Yeah.
The one where he does the pack opening and it's money to the guys that are playing the games.
Yeah. We connected with him sort of just as he was figuring out how to be massive, right? And so we were very lucky to sort of get in touch with him early, and he was a huge supporter of ours. And but what we always thought about Mr. Beast was you know, that's the compelling intellectual property. That's what should be on an NFT.
And well, so this is kind of part of my next question, Michael. That was kind
Yeah.
of bundled into this cult of chain question. And it was going to bring that up because we ended up one of our private members shared that Mr. Beast video with us during our research phase.
Yeah.
And I love Mr. Beast, and B, just seeing the pack openings. I think it was a 2017 or 2018 video that he had posted. It was just super impressive to see that early, like, kind of pack opening stuff that's kind of a bit more indicative of a 2020 feeling in the crypto space. But part of my interest here was some of the unique things that the NFT space had done was provide other utility within the token, whether it's a ticket, it gives you access, like Gary Vee's access to conferences. How do you feel QUIDD will adapt, or how do you feel QUIDD's going to adapt to maybe a more fungible, a more, not just a collector's item, but a collector's item that has an experience built in or something?
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. I've got a cynical take on it, and then I've got a much more wholesome, positive take. Just a cynical take is some of it is sort of like, oh, we sold this NFT and it's actually, very valuable now. Well, how else can we retain that person? Oh, let's come up with some after the fact experiences, right? So I think some of these things were done just as a nice thing for the community to retain sort of buyers and holders, and less of something that was conceived of before the NFT was even sold, right? And that's kind of the cool part, is you can evolve it even while the item is already out there. You can basically make the game and change the game after you've already sold the game piece, which is really kind of a wild concept. It's like Kickstarter, but digital and on steroids. So I think some of that's very, very, very cool. I think you could see us do a bit of that. We have a program within QUIDD called, it's sort of, the synonym is IR, but it's intergalactic realty. And we're basically selling like rare plots of land and rare equipment for Mars, while at the same time also building that world where those items become usable in. So it's kind of cool that way. But I would say outside of that project and similar projects like it, our focus for our collectibles is, I think, really around liquidity. And around building a really great commercial marketplace for any holders of those collectibles. There are discussions of like this ongoing perpetual utility. There's obviously partnership discussions that we're in where, mint it and use it in a metaverse. And that's all really super interesting and super compelling. But I think for us, the low-hanging fruit, at least over the next 6 months, is to give people like new, fun, and exciting ways to find something they want to buy, but then also sell something they want to sell. So I'm not going to rule out that every item on QUIDD that gets minted couldn't be usable in a metaverse or in some future game. I also don't want to share too much because we got to keep some things secret. But I would say in the here and now, there is a significant amount of work to improve the liquidity of what's happening in our marketplace. I mean, we have a vision where ultimately we're going to have collectors running digital hobby shops on top of QUIDD. And maybe you're not buying a drop from us. You're actually buying a drop from somebody who's decided to build their own business as a digital storefront for our NFTs. So in some ways, we don't need to be the primary market. You can be buying from somebody else who bought product from us at wholesale, and now they're running that small local, coins, stamps, and card shop. But it just happens to live only online, and the objects they're selling just happen to be NFTs and not things made of cardboard or metal.
Yeah, fantastic. My interest there was just because I'd seen some of the content creators we had talked to, they were using, for instance, I'm not a great artist, but I drew up a piece of art, and when you unlock, whoever bid the most for it, when they unlocked it, all the funds got to go to the charity that they would pick, and they got my phone number, my email, so we could plan something out, raised like $1,600 for a dog charity, made a video. So there's kind of a built-in relationship with here's a tangible collectibles piece that you get. Because when I first started being interested in the NFT space, like I saw it being used as rewards for charitable giving, or like you want to help the orangutan project out, you can feed an orangutan in the video game, and when you're actually feeding an orangutan in real life. So that's where most of my interest in this space was before. Just why I ask.
But but I'll add though, I think that's going to evolve even further. I mean, I came of age in a world of influencers and individuals on YouTube that had huge followerships, right, and produced incredible content. Like Mr. Beast is one, right? And you've watched them evolve their business models from sponsorships, because we used to sponsor a lot of those videos. That was kind of an evolution after ads, and then it was merch. And I think actually NFTs are a wonderful way for content creators to basically not just monetize their community, but to get their community to be economically staked in what they're doing. I mean, I'm a big believer that social tokens are going to be, the next wave. I mean, I'm going to buy your token probably pretty soon, right? And go along for the ride.
We have one already, technically.
Okay, then I'm in. Like, I'm getting in.
Yeah, nice.
but I think that is, and a lot of it is what folks like Chris Dixon from Andreessen Horowitz talk about, and a lot of it is about the ethos of Web3, where ownership was never a part of Web2, and the exchange of value was always lopsided towards the central service provider and away from the most valuable members of the network, which are the content creators that even gave you the reason for anybody to be there to begin with, right? So what I love about where this is all headed, and what I love about Web3 is it's got ownership at its core. And what that does is that gives more value to people like yourself and the other content creators that are the reason why YouTube is cool, right? So it's really the right ethos. And it's really something that is exciting, because you can wake up every day and work hard and feel like it's a really valuable mission that you're on, right? And like, let's take a big one, Mr. Beast. Like, he deserves every bit of, economic and financial success that he gets, because it's really hard to produce such good content as consistently as he has. He's just incredibly talented, right? But he shouldn't be locked in an economic system where more value goes to YouTube than goes to him. So anyway, it's an exciting time to be creating content or to be building anything.
Yeah, we have a lot of alignment on this particular thought. One of the constant things we try to repeat is that what you're getting is rewarded for participation. In 2017, I thought it was going to be post to earn type scenarios that sprung up, not play to earn, because companies like Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, you were never rewarded for the upside of the growth, but we're all the value of why the company became worth it. You got nothing back.
Right. Well, it's got to go from being transactional, right? It's got to be a reward that can also sort of appreciate in line with the overall community growing, or the overall, endeavor growing. So no, I think in a very good way, we're living in the future. And I think it's only a matter of time for other business models and their services to realize that community is all that matters. And you build the strongest community bonds with an instrument like a token. And we don't call it play to earn, we call it collect to earn. But you got to imagine that, we're 24 hours on from our IDO, but there's going to be, things like airdrops and things like rewards mechanisms, embedded deeply within the QUIDD marketplace.
Yeah, we've gone a little conceptual. I try to keep a lot of my conversations mostly broad concepts. I think it's easier to test, and I think it gives a really good view. A great founder is usually also a pretty intelligent visionary, and you have some amazing qualities. It's been a pleasure to chat with you today. So we're going to keep the last few questions quite short here. First off, I will mention, for anyone that has not yet, go look at the links in the description down below. You can follow QUIDD on all of their social media platforms. And as Michael has pointed out, you guys had a fantastic launch. The IDO, I think, closed out on the 18th. You had some big funding leaders there. I expect great things from you. Just to have that vision is one of the most important parts, I think, fundamentally. And you've been following that lead for a while. So my last kind of simple questions here are: what are some of the obstacles you see in terms of building in this sector, and what are some of the most unexpected, exciting things that you've run into along this journey as well? So 2 questions.
Oh, geez, that's on the exciting front, it was thrilling to successfully do the IDO for the QUIDD token yesterday. It's the behind the scenes of it was incredible, and I don't think anyone slept. And there were a few hiccups with our KYC provider, but everything ultimately worked out. Liquidity has now been provided, and I'm just incredibly excited about continuing to pursue more exchanges and more accessibility of the token. I mean, there's so much more in store beyond just an IDO. That's a very small milestone in the context of what's sort of yet to come. So, that is thrilling, but again, it's not even the first inning, right? To use a baseball analogy. In terms of some of the challenges, I think, take DeFi in general. I think that we've got to go through one more cycle to frame things like yield farming and staking in terms that the average mainstream user can understand. And I think once we can solve that, then I think we can get over some of those hurdles that might exist between making, what we're doing kind of a niche with maybe 100 million people and into a space that can have, 2 billion, 3 billion, 4 billion people. So I think generally speaking, the biggest challenges are just going to be taking a lot of things we know and love about crypto and being able to create metaphors such that they translate really well to, someone's grandparents, right? Or someone's neighbor. So I think it's largely still a communications challenge, but it's also one where we think we're really well positioned because our real mission is to kind of do NFTs for the everyman, right? And it's every woman or every person. It's not going to be, I don't mean to say that one couldn't, let's say, get a very valuable NFT on QUIDD and retire on it, right? We all see those tweets that people put out about paying off student loans based on buying a good PFP project. It's not to say that won't happen, but we always want to fight for making our NFTs very accessible to a broader community. And we're always interested in, okay, your GMV is through the roof, but is it because 20 people spent the equivalent of $200,000 per transaction per day, or is it because you have 20,000 or 200,000 or 2 million people? So we're very focused on the mainstream and taking wonderful concepts from crypto, but translating them to the mainstream audience and really building our business and building our community with a large number of users, as opposed to purely just a large price per transaction.
Fantastic. So we're going to jump off early because I want to continue on the conversation in the background.
Yep.
But Michael, is there any last thoughts you'd like to leave me with? I know again all the links are down below, so be sure to check those out. Give us a thumbs up if you like the content as well. Michael, we'll let you have the last word today.
Yeah, it's just come learn about the QUIDD token. Come learn about the QUIDD marketplace. Create an account, start collecting, give it a try. We've been here 5 years. We're going to be here 95 more. If you don't take a look right now, while it's still early, you can come and look at us again in a month or a year or 10 years. And again, I think we are converging on a world where people could be walking down the street and stop and pull out their phone and want to show off the cool digital collectible that they own and say, hey, check out this NFT that I have. I think that's right around the corner. And it's an incredibly exciting time to sort of learn about what we're up to. So thank you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, Michael. Well, we'll get you on the show back in the future as well. I think we could chive down a few different angles of conversation. We just kept it short and sweet for today. Again, be sure to check out QUIDD. Congratulations on your guys' awesome launch. If you for the rest of the Bear family too, you can download their app on your Android and iPhone. If I'm correct, there it's in both stores, Play Store.
That's correct. That's correct.
iOS. That's great. Good. I'm glad I got that right. And thank you guys all for joining us today. Michael, I'll keep you on for the last little bit. But Bear family, hope you guys enjoy the day. Remember, heads I win, tails I only lose a little. It's one of my favorite mantras in this space. And Michael's correct here. If you missed out on the IDO, be patient. You can always find more time to continue to invest. It's one of the smart things is to be patient. So thank you. I appreciate that sentiment as well. We'll see you guys again on the next episode. Ciao. Thank you, Michael.